Designing your new website but fumbling for design ideas? Maybe you're wanting it to look on trend, but you don't even actually know what is trendy on websites right now? I've noticed a lot of changes in the web design space just in the past few months, and today I'm relaying what I'm seeing. So let's get started. Trend number 1. For the longest time, white was the background or base color of choice for websites. It was clean and simple and honestly pretty easy to design with a white background. These days, however, the trend is definitely towards non-white backgrounds and base colors. Some websites are going really bold with black backgrounds, but more commonly, I'm noticing a more faint version of one of the brand's main colors as the background, often in a beige or neutral tone. When done correctly, this makes the whole website look so cohesive and the branding really tight. But going for a non-white site background is a harder to pull off trend for beginners to web design, so just keep this in mind if this is your first or second site design ever. Maybe save attempting this trend for a couple of websites in. Trend number 2. This one is good news for you if your site photos aren't quite of the highly professional quality level, because for the past few years, you might have noticed, full width site photos were the standard, and it meant that some really crisp, really professional level photography was pretty much essential to making an on-trend, modern-looking website. And while, of course, great photos are still important, incredible photos have thankfully become slightly less important because of this trend. I'm seeing a lot of sites use smaller photos, which are sort of sprinkled throughout the page or the banner, and are sort of dispersed throughout the site and are a bit smaller on the page, maybe as like a complement to the typography. Type is more often taking center stage these days, so while I would still obviously love for you to have super sleek photos on your website, if you don't, or if you're a web designer who was given some rather terrible photos by your client to make a website with, then do know that you can still make use of this trend to create a stunning website without the photos needing to be as much of the center of attention as they were before. Which brings me to trend number 3, a focus on fonts. Fonts which are bold and unusual are on trend, as is making 1 or 2 words really massive on the page, and a much more liberal use of large fonts throughout the site in the headings. The other trend I'm seeing is editorial fonts. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean typefaces that are specifically chosen to evoke a sense of editorial or journalistic aesthetic on a website. These fonts are often inspired by traditional typography used in newspapers and magazines. When you see a site with editorial fonts, the site overall conveys the style associated with editorial content. Now, if you happen to be using Canva for graphics and Squarespace for your site, and you want to know what fonts are in both systems so you can keep your branding looking consistent between your website and your graphics, do know that I wondered exactly that too back in the day, and that I put together a giant long list of all of the fonts which are available in both Canva and Squarespace. You can click above or in the link in the description below to get my guide on all of the fonts which are available in both Canva and Squarespace. Okay, on to trend number 4. This one is the opposite of thinking outside the box. It is quite literally boxing in your content. Lines and boxes are in. Neatly organizing your content into little boxes or drawing attention and adding a little bit of design style flair with a beautiful line. This trend is also so easy to implement. Add a background or banner image with some lines in it, or when you're designing a photo in Canva, for example, pop an unexpected line in here or there. Trend number 5. This next trend is maybe getting a little overused for my taste, but a trend video wouldn't be complete without it. I think calling it a fad, though, honestly would probably be more appropriate. I am talking about ovals and circles and rounded edges. So a lot of site building platforms released features recently to make this trend possible inside of the site editor without first needing to tweak a photo in, say, something like Canva or Adobe. And since that point, I am seeing this absolutely everywhere. Photos are cropped into ovals or have rounded edges on the whole photo or on a few of the corners. Or alternatively, I'm seeing a lot of circled lines beginning to appear around words that the designer really wants to draw attention to and highlight. While this is cute, I predict that this trend is just so overused at the moment that it might be making its exit soon. Trend number 6. This next one, it's honestly not great for website usability, and it can totally confuse your website visitors, but even with all the downsides, I am seeing quite a bit of this right now. And honestly, when done minimally, I think it can be okay, but I have seen some sites take this way too far. I am talking about unusual scrolling effects. I think we can look to Apple for where this one started. A few years ago, they were doing this on their product pages and it seemed to have stuck, unfortunately. What we expect to happen when we scroll through a website is that the page scrolls down onto the next section. Now what's often happening though as we scroll is that the background appears to stay stagnant, but the content moves over top of the background. Or one side of the page moves, but the other one stays still. Now, this can be okay, but the point at which you're scrolling and the website is suddenly scrolling sideways and then up and then down, etc., is definitely when I think this trend has gone too far to where I'd say that even though it might look cool, I don't think your website visitors are going to thank you for doing this one much. Trend number 7. This next one has been a trend honestly for a little while, but it doesn't seem to show any signs of slowing down, so it is making it onto the list. What is that? It's asymmetric layouts and unaligned items on the page. Before, it was all about following structure and following the grid and laying items on the page in a way that was very clear. Now, however, we have broken free of boring and went for something a little bit more creative, and I have to admit, I'm still a really big fan of this trend. I think it both adds visual interest to the page, it is creative, while not being too confusing like the odd scrolling trend number 6. So have fun with this one, throw an image here and a bit of text there, have a few images nearby each other, but don't feel like you need to make them perfectly symmetrical or exactly the same size. Basically, in order to nail this trend, don't stick just to the grid. Now, you might be wondering, how do you go about implementing these trends into your site design? How much of a difference do they really make to the overall look and feel as well? Well, watch this video next where I will do a website makeover on a DIY site and make it look super professional. Over 2,000 people have watched it and already loved it, and I think you will too.